Welcome to everyone. Welcome to another series of the Master Plan for Healthy Communities. It's a pleasure to have everyone here. Not sure if we have any first timer here. Is anyone coming for the first time or viewing us for the first time? If you're viewing us for the first time, can you just place it in a chat? Say where you're coming from, which country, which region. Okay, guess we don't have any. Just want to give a special welcome to our regular viewers of this Master Plan for Healthy Communities series. As I said last night, it's just getting better and better and better. Once the Lord is on our side, it's getting better. And I have no doubt that tonight is just going to get better and better. Tonight, we'll be looking at the topic mental health in children and young people. Last night, it was very deep, and we know that tonight we'll be going deeper and deeper into this issue of mental health. Just a bit of housekeeping here. Please keep your mics muted while our presenter for tonight, Andrea, will be, while she's presenting, please mute your mic. Don't forget at the end of each end of the presentation, you'll be able to ask your questions. So please save your questions to the end of the presentation. If there was something that you missed in the week and you want to probably just pop a question to us, you can send it directly to Andre, or you can just put it in the chat, or you can ask Andre right at the end of a presentation. You can ask her directly, and have no doubt that you will get an answer. Just before we go, hand over to Andrea, let's have a word of prayer, please. Our Heavenly Father, Lord, Jehovah, we just want to thank you for sparing our lives, Lord, to come to witness, Lord, and to have a better understanding of the issues of mental health within our communities, Lord, within our homes, Lord, at work, at school, at play. Lord, we just want to thank you for the message that has been put forward to us, Lord, so far, and Lord, we have been taught, and Lord, we just want to continue to we just want you to continue to guide us, guide our understanding, our thoughts as we go through this week. So Lord, with all those who are tuning in at this moment, Lord, wherever they are from, whatever country, Lord, just touch them at this moment. Thank you again, Lord. In the most holy name I pray. Amen. Again, Andrea, just want to thank you for coming again, for taking the time out, for presenting to us such a very not troubled topic, but a very monstrous topic in the sense of mental health. So thank you again, Andrea, and over to you.
Thank you. I'm going to share my screen now, and hopefully, okay. Just in case anyone can hear my little boy upstairs, he's just getting ready for bed, so he's probably throwing a bit of a tantrum. I just want to mention, you know, I am covering children and young people's mental health tonight. The topics that I'm mainly going to be focusing on is depression and self-harming. So I just wanted to say, you know, if anyone finds any of the information difficult or is triggered by anything, to really be mindful to self-care. So if that means, you know, taking yourself away, do what you need to do for you to keep safe. Okay. So yeah, since Sunday we've been looking at mental health, and I guess in a nutshell, mental health is like a scale, just like our physical health. It's very important, and it's something we all have. So in terms of young people, when we're referring to young people's mental health, one of the definition is the strength and capacity of the young people to actually grow and develop their minds, and the ability to overcome difficulties and challenges as well as making the most of their abilities and opportunities around them. Positive child mental health. When we're thinking about, okay, what does positive child mental health looks like? We're looking at things like, is this young person able to play and learn? Are they able to have fun and engage in different activities? Are they able to sustain relationships with their peers, with others? Do they have some level of understanding of what is right and wrong according to their age? Or should I say in respect to their age? Do they know what is right and wrong? And are they developing psychologically? And with that, we expect young people to have some level of so, to be able to manage some degree of psychological distress. So we want to be able to see young people managing some level of psychological distress, because at some point in life, everyone goes through those things, and it could be something as, like maybe facing exams and feeling anxious about that, but actually able to manage those and to cope with those kind of psychological distress. So that's what we're looking at when we're thinking, okay, this child has a positive or a good mental health. In the UK currently, these are just some of the statistics at the moment for children aged 5 to 15. 3 million, which is about 20% of the children have mental health problems. 10% of the children in the UK have a mental disorder. So that's a diagnosed disorder. And 30,000 children have a severe disorder, and they're probably in, like maybe sectioned, they really can't function. So that's 30,000 children. So imagine if children and young people from the age of 5 to 15 are struggling to that extent, what life is going to be like for them as adults. And I'm not saying, if they're struggling at a young age, it means that they're going to struggle forever, because that's not the case. But it does put them at higher risk to go through other problems in life when it comes to mental health, and also physical health as well, because we know that mental health directly impacts on physical health as well. So this is some of the facts around children and young people's mental health. I can actually send this to anyone if anyone wants a copy. But at the moment, about 1 in 20 5 to 19-year-olds have a behavioral disorder, and the rates are higher in boys than girls. 1 in 6 school-aged children has a mental health problem. And this is quite alarming, really, because it's risen from 2004 to 2017, and the numbers are still going up. Currently, the numbers are still going up. Common mental health issues such as depression and anxiety are increasing amongst 16 to 24-year-olds, and with 19% reporting they've had experienced mental health issues in 2014 compared to only 15% in 1993. And it might not seem like a big gap, 15 to 19%, but it just shows that it's increasing. They're also about 3 times more common in young women as well than in young men. Some other facts as well. Children with mental health problems are more likely to be excluded from schools than their peers. So in 2013 and 2014, 1 in 5 students with either a social or emotional or mental health difficulty have had some form of exclusion from school. And I guess what's really bad with that as well is, exclusion from school massively also impacts on that young person's self-esteem, their confidence, and it just have a knock-on impact. Just over a quarter of children and young people who experience both a learning difficulty and a mental health problem have had contact with mental health services as well. And there's quite a lot more. I could send this to anyone who wants to have a copy, because I'm not going to read it all. But children from the poorest 20% of households as well are 4 times more likely to have a serious mental health difficulty by the age of 11. And that's, in comparison to the wealthiest 20%. At the moment, suicide is the largest cause of death in young people under the age of 35. And self-harm is more common amongst young people than any other age group. So at the moment, I would say, in terms of, the schools that I work in 3 schools, and it's both primary and secondary age schools. And self-harming it's so common, it's almost seen as the norm, when it shouldn't be, but it's that common, and it just shows that, it's how children are managing with their emotions. But we're going to look at self-harming later on tonight. Other links to mental health, such as depression, is also hormonal changes. So especially in teenagers, their hormones are changing, and with that will come sometimes feelings of low mood, and other links as well to mental health issues or difficulties. When we're talking about depression, like I mentioned the other night as well, feeling low doesn't mean someone's depressed, or clinically depressed. Feeling low is actually, it's normal, and it's normal for children and for young people to feel low as well. It would be almost unrealistic to expect children and young people to just be happy all the time. So, sometimes as parents, we can get really worried and worked up if we see our children and young people presenting with any forms of like low mood. But it's really important to remember that it's actually normal for children and young people to feel low as well at some points. And it could be like, they might be disappointed about something, or they might have failed an exam. And it's natural, it's natural to feel low. So depression, again, like I said the other night, it's more than just a bit sad. Knowing that your child is feeling depressed can be really worrying as a parent. And when a young person's feeling depressed, sadness and low feelings become more overwhelming as well. And it stays for a longer period of time, making day-to-day life choices difficult, or day-to-day tasks difficult. A lot of young people go through depression and then come out on the other side and feel okay again. So it's not to say if you're a young person, or someone who's feeling is going through depression, it's not to say that's it. Going back to mental health as a scale, that can move either way. It's really important to remember that, and it's a good way to visually explain mental health to children and young people as well, because sometimes it's for children and young people, it's almost scary to think about mental health because, again, the stigma is still there that mental health means problems. Mental health means being in hospital, or it means you're a psycho, and these are the kind of words I hear young people use. So it's really good to be, to talk to them about what mental health is and use that scale that, even if someone is clinically depressed, it doesn't mean they're going to stay that way forever. So in terms of the difference between low mood and depression, again, as parents, it can be really useful to understand what the differences are, and because that can help you to understand what what the child is going through or your young person's going through, and you would probably know your child better than anyone, so you'd be able to recognize when there's changes in their behavior. You'll be able to recognize how long it's been going on for example, and all those informations, those little clues are really crucial. And sometimes I feel like society is so busy and everyone is busy and everything's really rush, and there's not enough time in the day for things, and it's almost easy to kind of overlook children and young people or to not notice certain changes. So yeah, it's just sort of things to be mindful of, because as a society, I feel, for me personally, I feel like everyone is more in the fast lane, and maybe more in the UK, Western kind of societies. Everyone's more in the fast lane. Families are more isolated, and it can be really hard, especially for single parents who they have to work and provide. And when you finish work, it can be really tiring. So to always notice subtle changes that's happening with your children can be really hard. But it's really good to just notice things, and not just notice them, but comment on them as well, so that your young person or your child knows that, okay, you're noticing. If your child is experiencing a low mood, they may feel more sad, they might be more tearful, they might be worried, tired, more frustrated and angry than usual, or feel really, really low in terms of confidence about themselves. They might be more self-conscious about what they're wearing, or where they're going, or what people be thinking of them. Just little things like that is really good to be mindful of. When a young person is depressed, sadness and low feelings don't change. They don't go away with time. It's very difficult to shift the situation without extra help and support. And you might find, for example, teenagers might sleep a lot more, and sometimes it can be really hard to tell because there's this expectation of what teenagers do, and sometimes we can put things down to, oh, he's just a teenager, oh, he's just a typical teenager, or she's just a typical teenager. There's nothing wrong, it's just normal behavior. And yeah, in some cases it might be, but it's just to be mindful and have those conversations to actually check out, is it just is my teenager just sleeping all the time because he's being a teenager, or is there something more to it than that? Behaviours communication. This is something I always have in mind, and again, I think if I could say take one thing from tonight's presentation, is to remember that two things. one, behavior is communication, and two, the behavior is separate from the person, from the child or young person. So, it's so easy for us to say, oh, that's just a naughty child, and that young person is just a bad child, or just to use language like that. But when we use I guess the dangers of using languages like that is that we're then labeling the child, and they're internalizing those labels, and they're feeding those into their systems, and they themselves will start feeling and thinking that they're bad, and they might have done something bad, which is the behavior. The behavior could be bad, but that doesn't mean they themselves are bad. So it's just really important to be mindful of that, and also to be mindful of what is the behavior communicating, because children, we know that children's brains aren't fully developed until mid-20s. So they won't always know how to communicate verbally how they're feeling. So in terms of how they'll communicate the worries or what's going on for them is usually non-verbally, which is either behavior, behavior, or maybe verbally as well. It's not just acting out in terms of physical behavior, it could be verbally as well. So spotting the signs. If a child behaves in a distress or behaviorally challenging way, think about those behaviors. What are they trying to communicate? So I'll give a personal example. I remember when I was a teenager, and again, I've shared about growing up with my auntie. I knew from day one until this day, I knew and I know my auntie had the best intentions for me, and everything she's ever done, everything she's ever said, she's always done it from a good place. There was never anything in it where she was trying to hurt me or trying to be harmful in any way. But it was really confusing because she was struggling with mental health issues that they weren't diagnosed, and because of how she behaved, more and more people would stay away from her, so we became really isolated. And I remember when I was a teenager, would go to one church, and that was our church, and next minute we're moving because she wasn't happy about something in the church, and then we'll be at another church. But again, we'll move from there because she wasn't happy about something there. And we'll go to another one. And again, we'll move. And it was really confusing growing up. For me, I was forming friendships in some of the churches, so it was really frustrating for me. But I'd never verbalized that to her, and I didn't feel I could verbalize that as well. And it got to a point where I think I felt like I didn't really belong, because at the time in school, I was the only Black person in school. So already I felt like there was a barrier in school and I didn't really fit. I had great friends and they did do everything or trying to make me feel included. And I did feel included, but there were little things like, for example, they would go out at the weekends and it was always on a Saturday. And for me, growing up as an SDA, I couldn't go out on a Saturday and do the things that they were doing on a Saturday or meeting up. And it was things like going to the park and having lunch, or going shopping together. All those things I couldn't do, so I didn't really feel I didn't have that sense of belonging in school, and I started feeling that more at church, because there were other peers around me who had the same beliefs, and I was able to form friendships. But then every 5 minutes we're moving from church, it felt like every 5 minutes we're moving from church to church, and those friendships weren't maintained. So for me, it was more in terms of behavior for me, I became more and more withdrawn, and the only outlet for me was actually writing. I loved at the time to write. So every time I was really frustrated, I was really upset about stuff, I would go to my room and I would write it out, and then I would just I would scrunch up the paper and I'd bin it. But I felt better. And that would become like a cycle. Every time I was really upset with things or I was frustrated, I'd write. But I'd also cry. I'd close my door and I'd cry. And I would make sure my auntie never saw me crying. But then I'd write it out, and then again, I'd do the same thing over and over. And then that for me was a release. I felt better that way. So other people, some people will withdraw, other people will be more behaviorally challenging, whether it's verbally or and it might seem as, this child's rude or they're giving attitude. But try and think beyond what you're seeing, beyond what you're hearing. What is going on for that young person? Why are they behaving like this? Is it because they're now going through puberty, or is there more to it? Is it just because they're learning off peers and they're picking up different habits, or is there more to it? Is there more underlying what they're communicating with their behavior? So in terms of spotting the signs, here are some of the signs that can indicate that a young person's actually experiencing some kind of distress. So anxiousness, if the young person isn't someone who's usually anxious about things and they start feeling really anxious, it could be anxious to talk to their friends, to do stuff that they used to enjoy. That in itself is a sign something might not be. It could be an early warning sign. If they're looking quite unhappy, again withdrawn, emotional, either crying all the time or going from having really bad outbursts, if they're soiling or wetting the bed, falling out with friends a lot, or if they become really obsessive over things. It could be obsessive over their food, or it could be obsessive over their appearance, or or maybe a friend. If they seem really obsessive over certain things, just think about, is this a new behavior? If it's not a new behavior, has it been going on for quite a long time? Have you ever spoken to the young person about it? Have you ever point out what you're observing? Or is there other signs with it? Is there a few signs together? Is the young person now showing they're isolating themselves more, they're not eating that much, they're sleeping more, or are they going out more? It's not always about being withdrawn. There could be more outgoing, or trying to go out more, or trying to please other people as well. These are just some of the signs. And again, in terms of your own children, you know what is normal behavior for that young person and what isn't normal behavior. Okay. Some of the signs of depressions, some of what I've just mentioned are also signs of depression, but not just depression. It could also be other mental health related illnesses as well, or problems. Again, finding it hard to concentrate in school, or losing interest in school, not wanting to go. If the young person's constantly pretending that they're sick, or trying to make themselves unwell so that they avoid going to school. Again, think about what are they communicating there, something not quite right in school. And if they're not talking to you about it, you know, ring school and ask about how's the young person doing in school, you know, and not just wait until it's parent teachers evening or when school's ringing home. You can also ring school to try and to find out, you know, how your child's doing in school, or if they've noticed any changes. If their behaviours you're concerned about, you could also speak to school about those and see if they're noticing anything as well. I've mentioned some of those. And again, everyone will express it differently. Not everyone are the same. Some people will be more obvious with, others it might not be. Young people are very good at masking, so that, you know, they're very good at hiding how they're feeling, but the non-verbals are always, to me anyway, the non-verbal speaks, and it says a lot. So in terms of signs of depression, you know, feeling empty or numb. So if your young person's talking about feeling numb all the time or feeling empty, if they're very self-critical and not really confident, they sleeping more than normal, eating more than normal, if they seem really tired, you know, and for a young person who should maybe have a lot of energy, but they're constantly tired, and by feeling tired, it's not necessarily sleeping more. It could just be, even if they're just sitting downstairs, but they just seem really kind of slow in their movements and fatigue. No motivation to do things. And the things that they used to enjoy doing, they're not doing it anymore. They're not really self-caring, like washing, or they're eating more in their rooms, or hiding stuff or hiding snacks. They're wanting to self-harm, or you've noticed that they're self-harming. Or if they talk about suicide, you know, it's normal for young people and children to be curious about death, which is different to a young person talking about suicide. And they might not necessarily talk to you with those words, suicide, but they might say things like, you know, I wonder what life would be like if I wasn't here anymore, or sometimes I think it would just be easier if I wasn't here anymore. Just little things like that. And even thoughts like that, or sentences like that, doesn't necessarily mean the young person is planning to commit suicide, or that they're having suicidal thoughts. It could just be in that moment. It could be just a comment that they're making. But it's still good to be mindful that, okay, something else could be going on. Again, in terms of symptoms of depression, poor concentration. So if the teacher is talking to you constantly about this young person's not concentrating in school, you know, and you're noticing different signs as well, think about what that could mean. The other stuff I've on here, I've already mentioned, difficulty sleeping as well. So for a young person, this is just a visual drawing of what it might be like for them in their brains. You know, it can be really hard to think, you know, to even for simple things, like you might ask them a simple question like, what do you want for tea? Or what should we do at the weekend? What would you like to do over the summer holidays? Or anything like that that might seem simple for you, but to them it might just be too much information because their brain is just completely tangled and they just can't think straight. And you might see, they might be doing things like you might ask them to pass you something and they're passing you something completely different to what you've asked them for. And that on its own doesn't mean the young person is experiencing mental ill health. It's just another sign with other signs. So if there's a few of the signs that I've mentioned, it's really good to start thinking, what is this behavior communicating? Depression as well in children and young people can look really different to that in adults. Children might throw more tantrums. They might just seem like a really unruly child, and it would be easy. Let's say, for example, out in the community, it would be easy for us to look at someone else's child and just think, gosh, that child is so rude. There's no boundaries, and all he needs is, firm boundaries in place. It's easy for us to make judgments without seeing the full picture. And when we're out and about in the community, we're only seeing a piece of a jigsaw. We're not seeing the full puzzle. So, it's really useful to also be mindful that what we're seeing might not tell the full picture, and a lot more could be going on for that young person. And if we start thinking that way, then we can start empathizing more, and we can also start supporting more, because it's not always just the parents who can safeguard children. Safeguarding is everyone's business, and when it comes to mental ill health, that is also part of safeguarding children when we notice something, and taking an interest as well. So what would you say, if you could either unmute for a minute, what are some of the challenges children and young people are facing today?
Yes, I'd just like to say, there's a lot, particularly with, our children. Racism. So racism is having a massive detrimental effect. It's causing a lot of depression. It's causing a lot of bullying, and it comes in different forms. It's not just verbally. It's also the way they're ostracized or they're ignored, they're made fun of, they're bullied, and it's the entire environment that they're actually living in. So it's the system. So it's systematic destruction of the child's mind, and the child and their self-confidence is just taking a battering, daily. So
I agree.
Yeah.
It's racism is it's really big, and even going back to one of my personal experiences, which is feel like so long ago, it wasn't even from a young person. It wasn't so much from the children. It was the teacher, and the way the racism was, I didn't realize at the time, but I felt it, but I couldn't explain at the time what I felt. And I remember the teacher, we had to do our predicted grades for our mock exams, and I still remember the thought process I had, which was, I don't want to aim too high in case it's unrealistic, but I don't want to aim too low. And I remember I just put a C for maths, and maths was one of my favorite subjects. And I remember the teacher called me to the front of the class, and he called everyone to the front of the class when he was going through their predicted grades. But he said, I just remember him saying to me, "Are you sure you want to put a C because it's aiming a little bit too high for you?"
Wow.
And I didn't know what he meant when he said "for you," but it stuck with me anyway. And
Yeah.
I didn't, until this day, I didn't get any clarification. But I've always been very, I guess, stubborn to an extent. If someone tells me I can't do something, I would want to try and prove them wrong. So that comment for me, it was really hurtful because I actually thought, but I can get a C. And it really did affect my confidence and self-esteem. And I remember when I came home and I told my auntie that, she got me a tutor, and I was determined to prove him wrong. So I studied extra and things that my friends got easily. I didn't get that easily with other subjects, but maths for me was really easy. So I was just really shocked that that was the comment I got. And I was really happy when I was able to prove him wrong because I got an A in my maths. But it was just really, at the time, I don't think I even knew much about racism.
Yeah.
In terms of how it felt, but I just knew what I felt was really unpleasant. And I can still recall that. And it must have been a significant memory for me because I can still remember, even talking about it, I can still remember exactly where I was, exactly where he was, what the classroom looked like. I can still remember the day very well. So it is a big issue, and it comes in many different forms without someone actually commenting on, let's say, your skin color or your culture. And it's not just, I have come across as well where there's racism also to, where it's black to white. Like, say, for example, in communities where it's more, let's say it's more ethnic minorities, and there might not be that many white pupils. I've seen it as well where they're also they're also being bullied because they're not part of the group. And it is really, really unpleasant. So it is a big challenge at the moment, and I know it's more towards the ethnic minorities in terms of what I've experienced so far in my line of work. But yeah, it is really challenging. That is one of the big challenges at the moment.
Could I just also add to that? Yeah, I mean, because for your experience, I think a lot of people can relate to that. I can remember a teacher telling me I had a chip on my shoulder, but and he was very hostile and very aggressive. I also remember where it was. I can remember the hallway, and it was so all these vivid memories. So you're hearing something, and it's like, it's insinuation. They're not saying it.
Yeah.
That's what I meant by the system.
Yeah.
That it's not just children. It's whenever you walk into, any of the schools or the colleges or the workplace, and it's just permeated and it's pushed.
Yeah.
But I mean, could I just say not to pick to
No,
pieces
it's
what you're
fine.
saying, but in terms, like when you said racism from black to white, I would say that was perhaps that's more like a prejudice, because
Yeah.
like when you say what's the definition of racism, then it's like the ability for one
Yeah.
group of people to totally influence your life
Yeah.
dictate,
Yeah.
you know, housing, education,
Mhm.
you know, like workplace where you live, quality of life,
Mhm.
because we're looking at that stemming from, you know, the enslavement
Yeah.
trade, you know, how we were
Yeah.
taken, you know, where we were
Mhm.
taken from our homes,
Mhm.
you know, even in religion, you know, because
Mhm.
one of they actually call one of the ships a good ship Jesus. So they
Yeah.
used religion a lot as well to
Yeah.
make, you know, us feel, you know, like, I mean, for example, you know, growing up in the church, I
Mhm.
often heard children of Ham, you know,
Mhm.
or why were the children of Ham? We were cursed because we were black.
Mhm.
So it's a lot. So it seems
Yeah.
to be an institution that comes from, you know, that colonial, you know, white European powers, because
Mhm.
they had then the power to impose their
Yeah.
rule.
Mhm.
So that was really, I understand what you were saying in terms of
Yeah. No, I totally
bullying or
understand what
being
you're saying.
singled out. Yeah,
Yeah, yeah, and I guess yeah, I like what you've said actually, because that is the point I was trying to make, where um it's that feeling of prejudice, you know, like singling out someone, and it's because of something that they themselves can't control or change, and they shouldn't have to as well. Um, and in terms of like my experience, when I say my experience, more my professional experience, it is there as well. And in terms of, you know, the systems, it's done, it's in a way that it's, if you were to challenge it,
yeah,
it wouldn't get anywhere, because it's done so subtly. And
mm,
it's hard to actually, you know, it's also a feeling that you get, you know, someone could speak to you a certain way,
yeah,
and you can sense it, you can feel the racism, but they've not actually, for you to, for example, to raise that, you don't have anything concrete that you can use as evidence. um
I understand. Yeah, because what I would
yeah.
say is like when you break down the word racism, like
Mhm.
let's look at that. Well, when somebody speaks to you in a certain way, it's done with a lot of hostility. There's a lot of hatred.
Yeah.
So like there's a lot of bigotry. So like one way is like they don't call you the name,
Mhm.
um,
Yeah.
or refer to you. It's an insinuation. Like they say, oh,
Mhm.
I'll be lynched if I do that.
Mhm.
So
Yeah.
by using the word, they're now inferred, again,
Mhm.
um,
Yeah.
a treatment
Yeah.
of how we're treated. So you can, so sometimes, like, I don't know if this might be helpful, but the way I would challenge things is say, I don't understand why you're being hostile. I don't know you.
Mhm. Yeah.
Where's
Yeah.
aggressiveness coming from?
Mhm.
So then it's like sometimes taken aback,
Mhm.
because you've actually challenged. Like you said, you
Yeah.
can't
Yeah.
pinpoint the racism, but you can
Yeah.
pinpoint the direct,
Yes.
intention of the emotion behind the word and how they
Yeah.
phrased it. So,
Yeah.
so I say, oh, that's very bigoted. So
Mhm.
shit
And I
that.
guess it's you know, when you think about it in terms of children and young people, sometimes it's so hard for them to um you know, they don't know who to go to for support.
Yeah,
And it is bit, you know, in terms of mental health, the black community is two-thirds, you know, no, sorry, um, twice more likely to experience mental health problems based on racism or stem from racism. But in terms of them actually getting support or seeking support, it's much lower. You know, they're the group that don't really seem to get the support, and it's a mixture of there are a mixture of reasons for that, because one of it is to do with um, I guess the assumptions around this support, would they actually get support, or would that support itself be also racist? And because of their experiences, I don't know if you were on when we watched a video from Mind, and someone was talking about their experience in terms of therapy. He didn't feel, not that the lady was professionally not good enough to support him, but in terms of culturally, she didn't really understand what he was going through. And I think sometimes children do feel that, what's the point in going, maybe say, for example, going to a teacher, what's the point in talking or trying to get support, because it's going to fall on deaf ears. And I think that's where us as a community have to really create a strong connection with our children, and to deepen that sense of belonging, because it's really tough out there when they don't feel belong or when they're excluded from things, and that massively impacts on their well-being as well, their mental health.
Absolutely. And I think just to add to that, and then just to finish, is that what you said is so key, having a place. I don't know if it would be like a helpline, or or a Zoom or somewhere where they could actually say, look, this happened to me. But whereby we as a community, we provide that for our young people, for our children, because we can actually help them through it, because as I've heard so many times, it's a lived experience. It is a lived experience, and who better for them to turn to than somebody who's actually in their own community, they're kin, you can understand. So yeah, absolutely.
And it is real, it is real, it is happening. It's not something that's, as much as it may seem like, oh, things are getting better, it is still very much real, and it's still happening. So I agree, in terms of our community, what can we actually do to support our children and young people with that? And I think something like a helpline, having some form of support within our own community to support our children would actually be a really good idea, because then they'd have somewhere that they can actually go to as well. Thank you for that. So going back to in terms of some of the risk factors, bio, which is what we're born with, and again talking about race, we don't get to choose. Children, young people don't get to choose what race, where they're born, or what race culture they're born in. Social, what we grew up with, again, that's more environmental. Children don't get to choose these things. And psycho, it's again looking at the events, what happened to us. Children often don't get to choose what happened to them at all. They don't get to choose what happens to them. And what happens to all these three things will have an impact on the child's well-being and mental health, whether positively or negatively. In terms of attachment theory as well, when children have not had their basic needs met through important early relationships, they have no brain pattern for meeting those needs themselves. So, simple things such as, or what may seem like a really simple thing, such as when the baby is born, the rocking, and the nurturing, all those things when children are young is so important, and meeting their basic needs, such as and feeding them when they're hungry, helping them to regulate when they can't regulate. Those basic needs need to be met when they're young, and if they aren't met when they're younger, such as, for example, a lot of children who are in care, they've been put in care because usually because of some form of abuse or neglect, and all that has a massive impact on that child's brain pattern and how they would develop later on. The good thing with that, though, is that all the key relationships can support children and young people to develop those brain patterns that weren't developed when they were younger. Yeah, I'll put that. So in terms of attachment needs are activated during times of perceived stress. So say, for example, discomfort, danger, feeling tired, feeling unwell. Those attachment needs are activated when there's times of distress. The child must either have these attachment needs met or find other ways of coping. These ways of coping may go on to shape future relationships. So the way children learn to cope when they're younger, that can go on right up onto, into adulthood. So it's really crucial that we're recognizing what's going on for our children and what they're going through and how they're coping with it, because how they're coping with it, if it's negatively, that's going to most likely go on through adulthood unless they learn positive ways of coping with negative big emotions. And that's where we have to try and role model to children, when we recognize that something's not right, we actually naming what we're seeing, we're talking to our children about what we're observing and giving them that space as well, that safe space to share what's going on for them, so that we can teach them how to best manage those situations or level of distress. So this is just a visual kind of example of what goes on in a young person's brain as a result of maybe difficult attachment experiences. So low battery, where they're probably exhausted all the time. They might get angry all the time, or raging. Their brains might just be completely they might just seem completely confused, and I don't want to use the word messed up, but it is a word that they use. Oh, I feel messed up today. I can't manage with this today, or I can't cope with this. But yeah, that's another example of. And this is how attachment experiences shape the brain. So if you can see, I don't know if I hope it's big enough on the screen. The smaller brain, which is the extreme neglect, when a child is extremely neglected, look at the difference in the brain development. So it's not just the size of the brain, but look at the difference in what you can see, the grey area, compared to a child who's had normal brain development. So what could make it difficult for parents, parents and children to form secure attachments? And, there's so many things at the moment, but the parents could be going through domestic violence themselves in the household, and they themselves might not know how to seek support. They might feel ashamed, or they might feel weak, anyone experiencing domestic violence, it's easy for outsiders to say, well, why don't they just leave? It's not that easy for someone to leave if they're going through domestic violence, because it's psychological, it's really deep, and domestic violence massively impacts on that person's belief system about themselves. Also mental health issues. Household mental health issues is a big one. Again, going back to living with my auntie, it was so confusing, because I remember, like I mentioned before, my way of coping was to write. I had a diary and I'd just write all the time. And I remember one day I was just trying to figure it out. It was so confusing for me, because on the one hand, she was someone who wanted the best for me, and I knew that without a doubt. But on the other hand, she was almost like my persecutor. And I just couldn't understand, my brain couldn't comprehend how this person who clearly wants the best for me. And I remember thinking of all the external behaviors that I could see from her that showed that she wanted the best for me. But at the same time, the other behaviors that was showing like she was trying to persecute me, and it was really confusing. And much later, we find out that, okay, it was because of mental health issues that she was really struggling with. Again, other things that can make it difficult for parents and children to have secure attachments and strong connections is drugs and alcohol, or other substances. So if the parent is, for example, taking drugs or is an alcoholic, it's really difficult for them to be able to attune with the young person, and that will have an impact on the young person's attachment style. Postnatal depression as well is another one. If, again, I won't go into too much detail about that, but that can also impact on that parent-child relationship. And it's not to say that these relationships can't be formed later on, but the early experiences are really crucial to development as well. If parents had difficult attachment themselves, and they've not worked through those, trauma and also neglect. And that could be the parents' experience of parenting, or if the parent is neglectful, that would also impact on the child not having a secure attachment, and that in itself then have an impact on the child's mental well-being and mental health. So some of the risk factors, one is environment. I've just noticed I've spelled it wrong. Homelessness, discrimination, again, inequality in society, family, so family conflict and family breakdowns, and even though these are factors that could contribute or could make a young person more vulnerable, it's not to say that, the young person will have mental ill health or become mentally unwell because of these factors, but these are some of the factors that do contribute. Inconsistent or unclear discipline and boundaries, failure to adapt to the child's changing developmental needs as well. Again, drug and alcohol use, death, or losing a parent, or losing someone close, losing friendships, criminality. All these things can impact on a young person's mental well-being. the child also, genetic influences, such as if the young person was born with let's say a physical illness, that can put them at risk as well. It can make them more vulnerable to becoming mentally unwell. Again, it doesn't mean that if someone was born with a mental illness or disability that they will be mentally unwell, because it doesn't mean that they will be. But, these are factors that can have an impact. So how can I help my child? I've got a video that I am going to ask Andre to play in a minute. But before that, one of the things, don't underestimate, and I've said it so many times, don't underestimate talking to the young person or your child. Try to open a conversation with them and find out what's going on. Share what you're noticing about them. Listen to them, and provide emotional support. There are lots of things you can do to support your young person, to support a young person or child who's struggling. And what is crucial when you're trying to talk to a young person, try not to get judgmental. Try not to kind of dismiss what they're saying. Sometimes it's easy to say, oh, don't let that bother you, or oh, it'll be okay. And as parents, I've been guilty of that, where I've said to my little girl, oh, don't worry about it, it'll be fine. But that can be quite dismissive to the young person, and they might not feel heard. And if they're not feeling heard, then they're not really, that emotional issue that they're experiencing, it's still there, but they probably just feel shut down and might not talk about it because they're not really feeling like you're understanding what they're trying to say. If they don't feel like talking at that time, maybe encourage them to speak to someone else. Like it could be a family friend, it could be another adult that is a really good role model, or they've got a good relationship with. It could be someone at church, it could be someone at school, it could be someone in the family. Try and maybe suggest to them to speak to someone else, and don't be offended if they do speak to someone else instead of you, because there's so many reasons why children, young people might not want to speak to their parents. I worked with a young girl who she felt she had to protect her parents from what she was going through, and she felt like she was going to be an additional burden onto them. So she didn't really want to open up to them. And on the other hand, the parents were really concerned. They were really upset that she didn't want to talk to them, and they thought she just didn't feel that she could trust the parents. And it had nothing to do with trust. It was more the child feeling like she was going to be a burden, and she was going to add more pressure to the parents or more problems to the parents, which again kind of tells you how they see themselves. It tells you about their self-esteem. If they're seeing themselves as a burden or a problem, that can result in them becoming even more mentally unwell. Maybe try another day. You might know the best time. When's the best time to approach something with your young person? So, for example, if they're trying to watch their favorite program, that might not be the best time. Driving in the car or going for a walk, it might be easier for them to do something and talk at the same time. Allow your child more privacy and be there when they need you. it's, again, for me, when I was growing up, it was almost like, because I wasn't an adult, I shouldn't get any privacy. I was the child, so my voice wasn't important. What I had to say wasn't really important. It was very much dismissed, and it was more, it's what the adults say. It's the adults get heard, but the child pretty much got lost, and I felt like I was getting lost. And I wasn't. Again, I didn't see myself as behaviorally challenging, but I really withdraw. And that was something my auntie didn't notice. To her, it was just normal behavior. Whereas for me, there were times I was going to bed crying, and I was crying because it was the way I could release what I was feeling, all the emotions I was feeling. And tomorrow we're going to look at, I am going to tie it all together, and I'm going to link it again with the brain. But I just wanted to give an example. When children and young people are flooded with emotional pain, most time, the top of their brain aren't working. It's the survival, which I call the downstairs brain. In terms of explaining it to Pearl, I'll say the upstairs brain is your thinking brain. The downstairs brain is more the survival brain. It's things that it controls, things like your breathing, things you don't really think about. And when you're experiencing strong emotions, the downstairs brain pretty much takes over. And I remember a time I was far gone in terms of thinking. There was just no thinking. And I got out of a moving car. The car was going at 30 miles per hour, and I just stepped out of the car because I was that frustrated. So when I look back, I don't know how I'm alive. It's a miracle that I'm still alive right now, with some of the things that I've experienced. But I just remember I didn't even feel, I stepped out, and I think in my head I thought I was just going to step out and walk out. But as I stepped out, and I think my ankle twisted, and I just remember rolling. But then I quickly just stood up and started walking, and I didn't even go to the hospital to be checked over. But yeah, and that is what happens when your downstairs brain, your survival brain is fully in control, and it is scary. It is scary. Young people, if they don't get the right support, that's why a lot of young people self-harm. It's not, some people don't self-harm because they want to die. It's because maybe it's the only way they can release what they're feeling. I'll come on to that in a minute as well. Can I just ask Andre to play the video for me, please, which is about, so this video is about empathy versus sympathy. And it's just something that I think we should be mindful of when, when we are speaking to children and young people, to really empathize with them. So this video really explains the difference between empathy and sympathy, because I don't think sometimes people confuse the two, and sympathy and empathy is not the same thing. So yeah, I don't know if Andre is there. Oh yes, he is. Thank you.
So what is empathy, and why is it very different than sympathy? Empathy fuels connection. Sympathy drives disconnection. Empathy, it's very interesting. Teresa Wiseman is a nursing scholar who studied professions, very diverse professions where empathy is relevant, and came up with 4 qualities of empathy. Perspective taking, the ability to take the perspective of another person or recognize their perspective as their truth. Staying out of judgment, not easy when you enjoy it as much as most of us do. Recognizing emotion in other people and then communicating that. Empathy is feeling with people. And to me, I always think of empathy as this kind of sacred space when someone's kind of in a deep hole and they shout out from the bottom and they say, I'm stuck, it's dark, I'm overwhelmed. And then we look and we say, hey, climb down. I know what it's like down here, and you're not alone. Sympathy is, ooh, it's bad, no, you want a sandwich? Empathy is a choice, and it's a vulnerable choice, because in order to connect with you, I have to connect with something in myself that knows that feeling. Rarely, if ever, does an empathic response begin with at least. Yeah. And we do it all the time. Because you know what? Someone just shared something with us that's incredibly painful, and we're trying to silver lining it. I don't think that's a verb, but I'm using it as one. We're trying to put the silver lining around it. So, I had a miscarriage. Oh, at least you know you can get pregnant. I think my marriage is falling apart. At least you have a marriage. John's getting kicked out of school. At least Sarah is an A student. But one of the things we do sometimes in the face of very difficult conversations is we try to make things better. If I share something with you that's very difficult, I'd rather you say, I don't even know what to say right now, I'm just so glad you told me. Because the truth is, rarely can a response make something better. What makes something better is connection.
Thank you. I'm mindful of time. I might actually have to carry on with some of this tomorrow as well. But yeah, I'll try and kind of, oh gosh, it's gone back to the beginning again. Sorry. What I was trying to get across with that video as well is sometimes as parents we actually don't know what to do, and we always feel the need to fix, but it's not, sometimes it's not always about fixing things, and that can also be a reason why young people might not want to share things, because they'll probably think, oh, mom's going to come up with a solution, or she's going to try and want to do this. And it's not, it's not to say that's a bad thing, and it's not a bad thing to want to fix things as well, but it's really important to also be mindful that sometimes you might not have the answer, and just being honest about that and connecting with what the young person's feeling can be really powerful. I think, in most of my therapy sessions with young people, just feeling heard makes such a big difference. A lot of times, I don't have a magic wand. I'm not, if there's I work with a lot of children who have been placed in foster homes or care homes. I can't magically make that situation stop or disappear. I can't take them out of if they're going through neglectful situations at home or any kind of abuse. In terms of safeguarding, there's things that I can do, but professionally, there's boundaries. There's things that there are just boundaries in place, and I can't fix things. I can pray for them in my own time when I come home, but in terms of there and then, it's so powerful for them to feel heard. And And that, I think that's one of the key messages that I want to get across is listen to what the young person's trying to communicate. I've not got onto the self-harming bit. I'm mindful of time. I think I'll touch on this for 5 minutes, and I'll include it tomorrow because I will have more time tomorrow. So self-harm, it's a deliberate act to try and harm yourself. And it's a really explicit communication of distress, which, it demands a response. It's not a mental health problem, but often it's linked to one as well. And most of the mental health problems it's linked to is like anxiety or low mood, but it's not just those things that it's linked to. Sometimes young people come close to death because of self-harming behavior, not because they want to die, but because they might have self-harm too deep. Example, if they're cutting, or they might have done something that could have accidentally killed them. And self-harm isn't just about, cutting or burning or trying to harm themselves. It could be things like drinking alcohol and drinking too much, or overdosing on medication. So that there's so many different ways of self-harming. These are some of the things that people have said who self-harms. So for someone who, for example, if they're feeling depressed, it's because they want to feel something other than numbness. If they're feeling empty and numb all the time, they just want to be able to feel something else. The scar is also a visual reminder for some people of what they went through, and it's almost like to mark, when they look at that, they can actually see, I went through something and I've come out of it. So it's a reminder for some people. Self-injury isn't always about attention, but sometimes it is attention needing, not attention seeking, but attention needing. And that's another really important distinction that we need to be clear on. When young people are self-harming and it may seem like they're doing it for attention, it's not because they're trying to seek attention, it's because they're needing attention, and it's completely different. It can be a form of self-punishment if they feel that they're carrying a lot of guilt for whatever reason, they're not happy with themselves, so they try to punish themselves. Sometimes they'll self-harm in places where they know people won't be able to see, because it's not about people seeing it, but it could be because of how much emotions they're feeling and they want to release that. Teenagers aren't the only ones who self-harms. Like I said before, I work in primary and secondary schools, and currently at the primary schools, there are a lot of children who are self-harming, and it's more common than people realize. It's also very addictive. Like I said, it's not always about someone wanting to die. Sometimes it can be because they do want to die, and they want to die because they really see no other options. It's not because they really just want to, kill themselves, but they just don't see a way out of things. Again, I'm really, really mindful of time, so I am going to skip some of my slides.
Andrea, I'll set to rather skip and probably just hold. Probably we can hold those back for tomorrow, and then you could continue, because those are pretty much important information that you want to give to us here.
Yeah, thank you. And then I guess the last thing that I'll end on is, the protective factors. So things that are protective factors are like culture and religious values and beliefs. Having a family that really cares, good parent-child connection, having friends, having adult role models. It doesn't have to, it's not always just the parents, but having a role model that the child can connect with, and having a sense of belonging, you know, with peers and the community, not just within the home, but also within the community. But if it's hard to have a sense of belonging within the community, it's so important that children, young people feel they belong at home. And I'll end on this one here.
Thank you, Andrea, for tonight's presentation again.
Sorry.
Well, informative. Thank you again. For our viewers, hello? Right, for our viewers, please, for tonight, because Andrea haven't completed her presentation, please, we'll take the questions tomorrow. So if you can hold back your questions for tomorrow presentations, because Andrea hasn't completed her presentation. So please bear with us, but we'll answer all your questions tomorrow. Just before we close, just let's, again, Andrea, thank you again for tonight's presentation and for the information that you'll deliver to us tonight. So just before we close, let's pray. Heavenly Father, Lord, thank you again for such a timely presentation, Lord, for the information that would have been unfolded to us, Lord, and thank you for humbling us, Lord, to in a way that, Lord, we prepared our minds, Lord, and we listen, we look, listen, and learn. So, Lord, continue to be with Andrea as she come back tomorrow, Lord, to complete this. And, Lord, our questions, Lord, I pray that we'll have those answered even through the presentations tomorrow. So, Lord, continue to be with all of us here, all of our viewers around the world.